with clients, whether they were midwifery clients or business clients, there's this slowing down that needs to happen where you slow down, you open up your ears, and you listen and look for potential problems and solutions so that you can navigate and um, keep them on the path.
Welcome back to the CEO Moves. Today we are here with Marnie Cabezas of Medical Practice Management and Consulting, Cabezas.com. We've done a few on healthcare. This is our first time talking to a healthcare consultant for medical practices in the New England area. So I'm very interested in learning some of the lessons learned. Marnie, as a business owner that has sold a business, and also as a consultant that is working with businesses to help them through the sale of their medical practice. But with that, Marnie Cabezas, you started out in healthcare as a midwife. Tell the audience who's not in healthcare what a midwife is and kind of the mentality behind a midwife.
Sure. So midwife is, we like to call ourselves baby catchers, but we're much more than that. Oftentimes folks first hear about midwives as someone who delivered my baby or caught my baby. But we're much more. So for me, I was a midwife and I solely worked with people throughout the childbearing years. But midwives can offer primary care. So they're often taking place of a GP in women's health, and they offer incredible services throughout the childbearing years, from cradle to grave, really beyond.
When do you engage with a midwife in the process of having a baby?
Well, hopefully you have a midwife who's taking care of your well woman care, and sometimes not so well, before you even get pregnant. So she might be taking care of your GYN needs throughout your life, and then infertility, or helping you plan your upcoming birth. And then she does all of the prenatals and the postpartum visits. She's going to catch your baby and be with you throughout the process. She may also, if you're having a hospital birth, she may be a first assist, if you needed a C-section, but she doesn't leave your side. It's really, midwife means with woman. And it's just a different philosophy to be with the woman, to be with the person throughout their process.
As a former midwife and someone that still considers themselves a midwife for business owners, right? Tell me about the mentality that you took from being a midwife into owning and running your own business. What did you take with you? What skill set did you take with you that you still use today?
Well, I've had clients say to me, you have such a calming voice and persona. And I'd often chuckle because my staff who would work with me later on would just find me kind of all over the place, as oftentimes CEOs can be. We're loud, we're visionaries, we're go-getters, and we just bust through all the doors. But with clients, whether they were midwifery clients or business clients, there's this slowing down that needs to happen where you slow down, you open up your ears, and you listen and look for potential problems and solutions so that you can navigate and keep them on the path. If you think of like a bowling alley, when you go with little kids and they put those bumpers down the lane to keep you on track, that's how a midwife, in my opinion, behaves throughout pregnancy and birth and beyond, where we're putting those bumpers in there to help someone stay on the straight and narrow.
Stay centered, sort of a buffer or a bumper
On track. Yeah.
to keep you on track, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the wheels don't fall off
That's right.
Yeah. Very interesting. I want to hear also today on this interview, you've had an experience in my line of work, which is helping shepherd business owners through mergers and acquisitions in the process of transitioning a business from either one generation to the next or one ownership team to the next. You've done it yourself. You've owned a business. You've owned a medical practice management company that was in charge of billing and working with the insurance companies, the nightmare scenario of having to ask for money and code the thing, everything the right way. Tell us a little bit of the pros of that business, and then maybe some of the pros and cons. Too many questions at once. Pros and cons
Ah,
of selling the business. Let's tell us about the beauty of that type of a business first of all, and what you gain.
sure. Yeah. So as an owner, it was a national medical practice management and billing company that I had for about 26 years. And through that process, I had the opportunity to be invited to other people's homes, essentially, their business, and to see,
Mm.
you know, the dirty laundry, to see what works and what doesn't work. I also had the opportunity to sit on the board of directors for one of our clients when they went from being underneath another not-for-profit and they became their own entity. And they were actually going to be shut down. And several of us said, hey, we can't let that happen. So we helped them transition into their own entity. And that was similar to the transition process that I ended up experiencing when I sold my company, because I had a an up close seat to see what happens. People who are very involved in the business that are no longer going to be a part of it get their feathers ruffled a little bit, and they need to step aside. And in that case, they were actually terminating their relationship. So it shouldn't have been so hard, not like a merger and acquisition. But then I saw the segue, and what you think is set up to receive the new entity is often not there. And in the space of medical practice, you may have contracts with insurance payers that may no longer exist when you acquisition or when you transition. So you
Mm.
have to be prepared for that. And I've seen that with my other birthing centers who sold to other entities, or maybe wanted to come, rise out of the ashes after bankruptcy, and their contracts would disappear and they couldn't do business. So
Wow.
anticipating those problems was one of the adventures I had as a business owner. But I could never have been prepared for what takes place during the acquisition. And I think for me, the hardest part was having a staff at sometimes as large as 26. We were still a small company, but for me, it was a lot. They were, we were all very close. We knew each other very well. And to have to keep things quiet and not let them know what was going on was really devastating to me. So I think my midwife heart hurt through that. That was challenging. And then also for the clients, they weren't aware. Um, and um, and so that was certainly a con of the whole process.
That's something that we don't talk about a lot, and for a good reason, right? Because it's a secret. When there's a sale
Yeah.
happening, there's only a certain few people that know about it, and there's a lot of reasons for that, right? Because you want to keep the staff in place. What are some of the reasons
Right.
why you were told, let's keep this, between us?
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep
Um,
the staff in place, keep the team together. We want to avoid people job hopping and searching, and we want to maintain the value of the company. It's an art though. Would you say it's more art than science?
I do, I do. And that was one of the things that I found as business owners, that we didn't always hire people who had um, you know, coding certifications. It wasn't a requirement. I had done that, but I found that they weren't always the best equipped people to do the job. So we found people who were equipped to do the job. Then similarly, when we transitioned, we had people who had great alphabet soup after their name, a lot of corporate experience. And what I found in that science side, that it lacked that artisan
Mm.
approach. And we really needed to express the differences with our clientele, because they were midwives and they are very, very unique. They are unicorns. This company did finally realize that. And then they respected the staff and the staff know-how in a different way than they did when they were first acquiring it. They came to really understand that what we did was and do is an art form. Um, you can't just farm it out overseas, you can't just apply one, one size fits all approach. Uh, I mean, I would say that probably applies to podiatry too, but I've not done the podiatry billing. But I don't think it is as dramatic in the midwifery space.
You know, it occurs to me when you're in charge of billing at a private medical practice in particular, what would you look for in a person that you are hiring? If you were to start all over again, what is more important? Would it be education and background, or would it be character?
I would say tenacity and character. They need to be hungry. They need to treat the receivables as if it's their own pocketbook. So I would often, doing interviews, I'd say to them, have you ever been to the doctor's and you thought it was covered, and then you get a bill and your insurance terminated, or something went awry, a covered service was supposed to be and wasn't? How did you feel? What did you do afterwards? So if they just assumed somebody else was going to take care of it, well, that's not my person.
It's
So
not.
they might know all the boxes to check, but I needed somebody who was going to fight for the claim and find someone to talk to on the phone. And these days you can't get through to anyone at the insurance carriers. Human beings hardly exist. So it's really especially difficult. That tenacity and that hunger always took precedence over education.
I'll tell you what, it's a word that hasn't come up in a lot of these interviews. I've done 25 of these, and I haven't heard the word tenacity more than probably one other time. But that's in hiring anyone, I would say, for a business where you have to collect and have more than one or two conversations about something to clarify or to clear things up. You have to have tenacity. If you don't have a business. You don't have a business without tenacity. Do you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's for every single employee. The C-suite too, but everyone there needs to be tenacious. They can have a different approach. That's fine. But you mentioned at the beginning how my midwifery skills applied in business. I tried to share my experience with staff and give them role play opportunities, and then to turn the tables. When the billing service calls you and says, how would you like to make a payment today? Or maybe you've been sent to collections. I was not a collection agency, but that really uncomfortable feeling when you get a past due notice. How did you feel? And how did that person on the other end of the phone treat you?
Mm,
How would you have liked to have been treated? With
hmm
respect, kindness, understanding, patience, these assistance you might need. Maybe you didn't know how to pursue the insurance carrier. Maybe that biller helped you so that you could get some resolution. That's the kind of midwifery skills that we like to call customer service, but it's not. You're really midwifing the billing process. Um, After the midwives catch the babies, we're midwifing those bills.
Midwifing the billing process. I like it. You just called a new phrase
For
today
sure.
when the CEO moves. This is great stuff, Marnie. These are answers to questions that I did not anticipate on this podcast. Let's keep going. I want to talk more about the lessons you learned in terms of runway in selling a business, because I know you sold a business in 2023. We'll leave names out of it. We'll leave names and people. But you had a billing business in 2023. How much time did you have before you sold it to, in your mind, get all your ducks in a row, line everything up so that it was a smooth transition? How much time do you wish you had?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of like a hurry up and wait. And so all of a sudden, you're stuck with a bottleneck of getting everything done at the last minute. I had started to think about selling my company a year prior, and then I had spinal fusion surgery, which was a great thing, but that took over my life. Uh, and then I started looking at it again in June of 2023, and found a broker. And then it's like when you're going to sell your house or look for a house, before you know it, the process it goes away so quickly, or takes you on the journey so quickly. And I had received an offer, a few offers actually, on my wedding day, which was funny. So we had a lot of things going on in our lives, and we went into the due diligence process, I think it was in October, and then we sold on 12/31. It was a Sunday, and everybody woke up and signed the papers. So it was a quick process. It was all consuming. You don't even know. I mean, the I'm sure you know, but I was not aware of how much I had to better understand about my business. So here I was, the CEO, and you have other people who are handling things, and you realize, wow, I don't even know where do I get that report? Where is that report? Because I have to find it. I
Right.
can't ask everyone else. Eventually, I pulled a few people in, of course, but um, you start looking under the hood in ways you didn't know beforehand, and we actually were really thrilled by how much uh, information we could share. I had a business advisor who had gone through this, up teen times, and he was impressed with what we could bring to the table.
Mhm.
What I was not prepared for was um, how nothing is supposed to change on day one going forward, and yet everything does change. So how do you do both successfully?
Right. Uh, Name some of those changes. So I would assume it's who do we turn to for a decision, right? Like that's probably the first thing I think of is a business is just a group of decisions that are made every day, right? And as the CEO, you're usually the one that either makes the decision or gives someone authority to make the decision. Is
Right.
it fair to say that was the biggest change for you on day one, or what was the biggest change that you noticed on day one that was you were like, wow, I didn't expect that.
Uh, the the upset and grieving was to be expected to a degree, but not to the degree that it was. Uh, People felt betrayed. Staff felt betrayed by
Okay.
me. And so there was a lot of navigating
Emotion.
that had to be done, that took up time and space. So, when you're running a company, you know that in an 8-hour day, how much work does get done in 8 hours because we're humans, we have to take breaks. We're also talking. And I just knew that suddenly the wheels stopped because everyone was talking and trying to figure things out. And they suddenly had new leadership that was trying to ease their minds and come in, and there was no trust at that point. So the trust was very hard to to move through. I can't even say overcome, but just to get through that process and then to begin business as usual, which shouldn't have stopped. But we all know it has to stop because you have to figure out, who do you go to? How do I get through this? Do I ask Marnie? Do I ask the person who used to be in charge of me? Or do I go to this new person who I don't know, who doesn't even know what we do?
This comes to mind when you're describing decision making and you're describing lack of trust or a lack of understanding as to what's next for the
Mhm.
employees, right? I think what comes to mind is I've been through several acquisitions. I've been through several mergers myself. I've helped shepherd people through several mergers and acquisitions. I think what the key thing is, if you're not aware of it going on, is when you're made aware of it, you think, well, I was telling myself a story about what I'm doing here. There's a vision and there's a story, and I thought I fit in here.
Right,
And now I learn, well, that's not quite where I fit in, and it's not even the story that I thought was going on either, right? I mean, I think that's probably the one of the biggest things to overcome. And how do you overcome that um, quickly so that the company doesn't lose momentum?
right, right. I would say that, it's always easier from my point of view to see what they could have done differently, perhaps, um, is to have extra people ready to do that. I'm laughing, but the grief counseling, somebody who's going to just help them
Yeah.
get through it, know that they need that space and help them get through it faster instead of not acknowledging it. And I'm not saying that they didn't acknowledge it, but that really we all needed to keep working. We were already short-staffed
Yeah.
at the time that I sold. We needed more help at that point.
Yeah.
And
So fair to say you need a team to get through a transition. You can't just sell, you can't just hire a broker or an individual advisor and say, hey, walk us through this. Help us get this thing done. You might have to do some hiring, or you might have to build a team as a backup to the team to help make it
I
easier.
think you need a facilitator, like not a project manager, but a facilitator who behaves like a project manager, who is actually uh, their own independent contractor, and they're working for the seller and the buyer, and they're going to help you merge and move through it, because someone needs to be unbiased and tell the truth. And there's a whole lot of not truth being told,
Mhm.
because the selling, entity, the staff is afraid to speak up to the buyers because these are the new employers.
Right.
And the buyers are trying to hold their position. This is new. This is what we're going to do now. Everybody get on board. And that can ruffle feathers. And there just needs to be an in-between person who can say, let me just tell you what's really going on in both camps, and let me help you, move through the process. Like we need a mental health person who is great at business too.
It's a role I'm very familiar with because it is what I do. But I think that type of a role, what do you think it takes to have that type of a role? What kind of a personality do you need to have to be a facilitator of a merger or an acquisition?
You have to be comfortable navigating conflict, um, not necessarily be a people pleaser, but someone who is pleasant to be with,
Right.
so that folks can feel that you're trustworthy, and that you can advocate and communicate on their behalf, and that you're not afraid to tell the truth. And the truth hurts sometimes. So you have to be able to adapt and understand. I don't think that in my situation it had to be someone who understood medical billing. It could have been somebody who understood refrigerator making. It could have been anybody
Yeah.
who was skilled at managing both teams.
Diplomacy 101, I think, not
Diplomacy.
101, probably 401, right? A diplomat is someone that they're like, well, I have to tell the truth or I don't have anyone's trust, but I have to
Right.
tell it in a way that people, it won't inflame the situation either, right? So I think of inflammation. You can't be someone that's inflammatory or that gets too emotional about things. You have to want to tell the truth, and you have to want the right things to happen. And you lose someone's trust or you lie in a situation like that, you are no longer a facilitator. You are no
Right.
longer a diplomat.
Right.
Really good stuff. I'm glad we got to this point. What are you excited about today? What are you excited about in your practice right now that you want to do more of, that maybe we can let our audience know that you're available for right now?
I'm really excited to be untethered, to be able to go in and assist people where they're at. Being a facilitator is where I find a lot of joy. Within my consulting practice, I joke and say it's like going to a hotel and going up to the concierge desk and you say, I'd really love to have some mangoes. And the hotel says, well, we don't grow mangoes, but I know a guy. And that's what I like to do, is come in and assess the situation, listen, find out what's going wrong, what's going well, and look for solutions. Workflow optimization is where I really enjoy hanging out and spending my time. But then again, I know a guy, so I'm not an attorney, I'm not an accountant, but I'm going to find you who you need to help you get through some of the roadblocks that I can't physically assist with, but I can help facilitate.
You're a midwife, you're a problem solver, right? You're a consultant, you're a problem solver. That's the skill set. Other than being a diplomat, right? Diplomacy. You have to have the tenacity. Just to summarize everything we've talked about, you have to have the tenacity of a business owner, a business person. You have to have that diplomacy, and you have to be someone that enjoys solving problems, even if it's not even if you don't get credit for it, you're going to go find the solution.
Yeah.
I would hire you in a second. If I had a really big merger to work on, I would hire you as part of my team. And I hope that came across in the interview today. I'd love to do this again with you, Marnie, and see where you're at in 6 months, 12 months down the road, and talk more. But thank you for coming on the CEO Moves, and let's do this again.
Thank you. It was great fun.